that was fun. So they picked that one. And so we went back home, and I put it over one of the doors, and I put that willow there. I says, now, we all have times where we get out of line, and I says, you're going to let you make that decision whether you want to or whether you, but you have your free agency. And so I put that up there, and I said, now you're going to get switched on the legs if you get out of line, and it merits it, you know. And they still thought that was fun. But I will never forget the first time one of them got out of line in something that was bad. It was definitely needed correction. So I switched his legs, and the other boys saw it, and I never had to switch again. He was probably the pattern that they were going to follow. And we used to have a lot of fun as a family. We had an apple orchard, and so I bought them all mitts, you know, catcher's mitts or baseball mitts. And we picked apples in the fall. And I would climb up to the tree and throw the apples down, and they'd catch them. And it was, we had lots of bruised apples in the first year, but then we buried them in the cellar. We had apples all winter, but we could talk about a million things like that. I'll leave back to you.
I think another thing that kept us close together was George was in the bishopric at church, and he was gone practically every night. And he worked all day in real estate insurance, so he'd stop in during the day and so forth. I said to him, I had been reading in a book, Joseph F. Smith, who was a former prophet, said how great it would be if families would get together one night a week and have a party. Just have fun together and talk things over and bring their problems and so forth. So I told him to ask the bishop if we could have Friday night, because they like to stay up late, and we wouldn't let them stay up late on the school night. So Friday night was their night to stay up late, and we had a tradition of having dinner by candlelight, because when we were engaged, this lady served us dinner by candlelight, and so every Friday night that's what we would do. And then we would invite the grandparents to come and have dinner with us, and then the kids, that's when they started singing. And then they would put on a show for the grandparents. And they worked every week to learn a new song for family night. Those songs came in pretty handy when we got down to the Andy Williams show, believe me. But it did keep us close together.
Well, I was listening to her. What'd she say?
Well, I want to ask you, when you were talking about discipline, there's a lot of controversy about spanking nowadays. You know, children lay a hand on a child. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's terrible to hit a kid, you know, because you might hit him too high on the back. You could hurt him. No, you wouldn't want to hit him on the head, would you? But I switched on the leg, down low, and I never had a problem with that from then on.
But do you think spanking is wrong?
Oh, I think if you allow a child, the Lord gave us all free agency, didn't He? And in doing so, why, there's no questions. They're mischievous, some of them, and they want to do different things, and that can be corrected because they can have just as much fun not doing it, and doing something else. Let me say one other thing, and I'll give it back to her. I'm not patting George on the back, but I never swore in my life, and so we never had a problem there. My example, I think that was just one phase we've been through. She can probably tell you more about it.
He accused me of spoiling him, and then he had to straighten him out. So I take him on. But getting back to your question, I don't think it hurts to feel little love taps on the, you know where. Because the Bible tells us you spare the rod, you spoil the child.
Yeah, I don't know if that is, I don't know if I feel like I need to take that literally. Is the rod supposed to be a
just a little
smack,
willow?
or is it supposed
to be
willow? It's supposed to be just a symbol for discipline.
Yes. Children, discipline is really a form of love. You can study psychology and find that a child who knows that there are bounds beyond which he can't go is more of a secure child.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, there's a little story, a true story I heard not long ago. These two girls had gone to a party, and the mother was questioning a little bit, and she called in 2 or 3 times to talk to her daughter. She wanted to know if she was okay and if she wanted to be picked up. And the girl says, "Good laws, I wish my mother would leave me alone." She said, "She's always bugging me, you know, things like you hear kids say." And this other little girl who had no one to care about her, she says, "Oh, how I wish I had somebody that would care for me like that."
Oh, yeah.
So you see the fine line.
Yeah.
Discipline's important.
It's just the type of discipline. That
Yeah, you don't do anything harsh.
May I say one other thing? You know, if you don't correct your child, society's going to have to do it for you. Who would you prefer? And children need and want guidelines from their parents. If you have maybe you're a very fussy woman in your home and you don't want them throwing things around. Well, in a nice way, you can have that. And they'll comply. And then they grow, follow those particular guidelines. I think the Lord gave them to us to raise and to nurture and love. Every time you make a correction, you've got to follow up with love, haven't you? Here we go.
That reminds me of another comment. Our prophet David O. McKay and his wife wrote a book. He mentioned this particular thing. He said, when you promise a child something, make sure you follow through so they won't feel that you're inconsistent. If you promise them a spanking or a discipline of some kind, or deprive them of some privilege, you know, because they've done something wrong, make sure you follow through and see that you do that. But if you promise them a reward, only give them a candy bar for doing such and such, make sure you do that too, so they can believe you.
I was just going to say, nowadays, you know, as parents, you have to have a lot of patience. And lots of times it's not the child that, you know, I mean, the parents abuse the children, and maybe the child isn't even doing anything wrong. I mean, it takes a lot of patience to have children and to raise children. And, you know, I think, you know, I raised my 3.5-year-old niece, and it takes a lot of patience. And a lot of times when you hear all these stories on TV and stuff, some parents don't have patience, and I think that's where the abuse comes in.
Let me follow up. You know, take your grandparents. They lived a different type of life than your children do. In other words, their correction was probably more stringent. And it's easier to, like she said, to raise 2 children than it is 9 children, because they work off each other. Well, I say, they correct each other. I lost my thought.
One of the comments I'm going to make, I'm basing on the movie Side by Side and also the story with the Jacksons. I'm proud of the way that you raised your children in the music business, because like Side by Side, you told your children at any time they wanted out, they could go. And I know for the Jacksons, basically Mr. Jackson forced his children to do so. And you look now, great as your children are, and the turmoil that the Jackson family is going through. And I think that has a lot to do with the way that you raise your children.
Had a good father.
Well, Joe Jackson, we knew him very well. His correction was not my type of correction at all. And then maybe when Michael took off, he went through the roof, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes money can do that. Wouldn't you hate to step back and be a teenager today? Wouldn't you? I don't think I'd enjoy it. What are all the problems that are facing these young people? This patience deal. I think we have to show more patience, and I don't think I could raise another family the way I raised mine at this time. I think I'd have to be far more patient. And I know love is the answer to the whole thing. Well, I better stop there before I get in trouble.
Did I answer those questions?
You know that I like to use with my kids is the timeout method. You know, to where they have to have time for themselves, you know, if they're bad, you know, they gotta have 5